we need to actually get back to the vision.
Yeah.
We need to get back to the goal. The best way we can get unstuck is to reconnect to what it is that we want. What is it that we most desire? And that can be a personal goal, that can be professional, that can be something for your business, depending kind of where you're feeling that stuckness. But as soon as we can ground ourselves and reconnect to what we want, not what we want for others, not what we think we should want, but what we actually truly want, something kind of unlocks in us, because now we know where to focus our energy and where to focus our attention. And that's what makes goals so powerful, right? Is if we don't have a direction, you spend all day kind of aimlessly sending your energy, your time, your resources in so many different directions, and you end up depleted, you end up tired, you end up feeling like you're stuck because you don't have that level of focus, and goals really provide you with that level of focus. So with clients, it really is as simple.
Welcome to the High Performance Podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I have Kirsten here going to share her story. She has an amazing background around leadership and sales, and we're going to talk a little bit more in depth of how she's helping a lot of entrepreneurs and businesses do this. Kirsten, right off the bat, tell us a little bit about high performance. What does that mean? What does that shape in your mind with what that looks like in every day? What does that portray for you?
Yeah, I mean, I have been described as an all-in kind of person, someone who is constantly in motion. And I believe high performance is really being committed, right, to the vision, the goal, the thing that you want to make happen, and then really putting in the work to get there. And staying consistent in that commitment, being open to other possibilities in how you can maybe achieve that goal, but definitely that all-in energy where you are willing to do the work, make the commitment, and show up consistently. I think that's what really leads us to experience that high level of performance.
I love that. And how have you had that in your success? Tell us a little bit about your expertise, what you help people with, so people really get a context around what you do and how you help people. Yeah,
well, we might dive a little bit more into my past, but I definitely come from a career where, you were awarded and recognized for high performance, right? Yeah. Definitely a bit of a competitive nature in how I was raised in the corporate world. But what I find is it lends really, really well to helping people today. So as you shared, I'm a leadership coach, really helping individuals and organizations unlock possibility, expand their vision for what they think is possible, and help them to get where they want to go faster. Right? And so in terms of, how do we get you performing at a higher level, that could mean, increasing your sales, increasing your revenue. Maybe that leads to increasing your income as well, depending if you're contributing as an entrepreneur or as an individual contributor in an organization. And on the leadership side, there's such an amazing opportunity out there for people to increase their self-awareness that in a way that directly correlates to how they inspire, how they motivate, and how they really rally everybody else around them to enroll in their vision, and by leading with that kind of energy and inspiration, you're taking everybody to a higher level of performance. And so that is the area that I like to work in. It's leadership coaching, but I do love sales as well, but I really think that there's an opportunity that the better we get to know ourselves and the better we understand ourselves, we can perform at a higher and higher level.
Absolutely. Now take us back to the very beginning. Where did this all spark for you? Was this at school selling a candy bar? Help us understand the beginning stages of where you knew you were a little bit different and you're a high performer, always learning and growing. Where did that all start?
Yeah. I mean, if we want to go way back, kind of the joke is when I was 5, we still had half-day kindergarten. There's full-day kindergarten here now. But I was the kid that came home from school and was like, what are we going to do now? And my mom was like, have a nap. Naps were not on my agenda. Like I was like, do more. How do we get more done in a day? I mean, I was the kid that was like a competitive gymnast at 10, dancing on the days that I wasn't doing gym, led to competitive soccer. So always wanting to fill my days and find meaning in what I was up to, and to really feel that, where I was putting effort in, I was seeing results, right? And I was seeing myself improve. I was seeing myself, let's be real, at the top, at the top of the class if it was academics, at the top of the podium if it was sports. And so I think that kind of nature of wanting to be busy and wanting to be active and always be moving lended itself really well. If we kind of fast forward to my career starting in sales, I completely fell into it. I remember resisting the idea because, like many, sales can sometimes come with this, I don't know, it's almost, everybody's definition of sales is a little bit different, and people can get really uncomfortable around the word. And I have to say, I felt the same way when I found myself having graduated from university. Again, why have one degree when you can have two? So I have a degree in biochemistry and a degree in business administration. And I ended up in tech. I worked, behind off in school, thought I wanted to go into more of like the healthcare industry, thought, I'll work first. Well, I found myself in the technology industry in a sales role. And within a few years, I had found something that really aligned to how I got motivated, what lit me up. You're really competing more against yourself in a sales role than you are against teammates, and that really lended itself well to me. And it can also be a really like lucrative career, and one that's very social and based on relationship building. So I spent 12 years in a technology sales role at a company here that's actually headquartered here in what would be my hometown of Toronto, Canada. And then my last 5 years were with Amazon Web Services. And throughout that, I always had this like itch to do something myself. I have parents that are entrepreneurial and have had different versions of self-employment. My dad was a real estate agent. And so this idea of working for myself, like the seed was always like planted. I just didn't know how it was going to come to be. And, I found myself really stuck at a bit of a crossroads in my career where I wasn't getting where I wanted to go, and I wasn't being given the growth or the development opportunity to figure out maybe what's the gap, or what do I need to work on, and how do I get there? And so, it was, I guess, like a few years ago now, I found myself in bed first week of the year going like, what am I doing? Like, I just like, this is not the career. Like something needs to change. Maybe it's a different role. Maybe it's a different, I don't know, but something needs to change. And so I hired my first coach. And that was when things really shifted for me, because all of a sudden I started to learn more about myself. And it was okay, that maybe things weren't going the way I wanted. Maybe I was meant for something different, something more, other possibility. Like I started asking myself questions I had never asked myself before. And was
that the first time? It was that you invested in yourself?
Absolutely. And it's so funny because if I think of like even a year prior to that, I remember a friend saying like, well, what do you do for personal growth? And I was like, what's personal growth? Like I had never ever thought to put my money in myself, and so great question there. Cause that was transformative, just the idea of, and like putting money into my own development.
Absolutely. That's
right.
A big
and I
shift.
think you can probably relate to that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember my first time too, but it was more of a hardship because I was like $60K in a hole from a past venture. And my wife came to me and said, hey, I'm pregnant. And if you can't figure out how to make more money for us, like go get a job. And I knew, I was like, that's not what I want to do. I want to focus on building this. And so I got mentorship, and that changed everything with the exact blueprint and the mentorship that helped align all of that. So I definitely agree with you. Like it's a game changer. I don't know why people have never thought of doing it or even risking it all in themselves, but huge difference with that.
I think your story ends well, and that you right you got out of that. But I'm sure there's also a handful, probably more results that you could also share from that experience, or the other mentors or coaches you've had since then, right? Like that return on investing in yourself, like you can't really even give it a metric or a measurement, because the results and the effects and the impacts are like improved happiness, more calm, more energy, more alignment. Like those things don't like quality of life. Like you can't put a price on that. You know what I mean? So coaching to me just opened up this whole other level of mentorship, right? Where someone was along with you for the ride, someone was like cheering you on, had your back, was willing to challenge me. Like when I talk about high performance, like one of the best, I think, one of the best things you can do is find someone that challenges you. Someone that challenges your thinking, right? Someone that makes you question or rethink or consider another option or a perspective, because then that allows you to access and expand in a whole new way. And that's what I found coaching really did for me. And I was like, I have found now what I meant to do.
And then now you're in a place that you're coaching and mentoring people. That's not an easy shift for most people, going from working, a job and then shifting into where you're an entrepreneur, and then even building from that place too. Like how was that transition? Was this like a Hollywood moment where you like put a knife in the tire of your boss and give him the bird and you're like, I'm going all in? Like tell me a little bit about like how this was it a transition? Was it like one day you're done? Like what did that all seem?
It was not that dramatic. I don't have really a Hollywood like hit here to share, but there was definitely like that seed was planted, and I started to work a timeline. Like I had a timeline.
Yeah.
And by the time I shared that with my employer, I had the space and the time to step in a way that felt really good to me. And I think one of the things that I learned, and I encourage people that are looking to make career transitions, was, I knew that it was going to take time to build and to grow, but I did start to build my business, my practice, before I left my job. And not so much because it was going to immediately supplement my income, but more one thing I did do is I took a 2-month sabbatical the summer before I left to just see if I was comfortable with the idea of working for myself. So I kind of ran like a little experiment, went back to corporate, and it was like within days, it was like I was on calls for full-time work going, oof, this is like leaving me depleted. And then I would have a coaching client call, and I would be like, my energy would be just through the roof. And so it was just so clear to me, the direction. So yes, I had some clients, but more importantly, I knew I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I had done some testing and experimenting, so I knew stepping away was stepping forward. I was taking the leap of faith, but not falling off the cliff, so to speak. I had something to kind of, a raft to kind of carry me along, and a North Star. Like I knew that I had a direction to follow that really got me excited and lit up.
There's something to be said about that alignment of like all of a sudden you're like, you found your lane and almost a calling or destination or destiny in a way where it's like there's alignment from leading up to this point where it's just like the wheels got on track and now you're like, you're cruising in that direction. Well, for our listeners and hearers, that people are, I got beginning entrepreneurs and other people are listening here. Where was the path for income that you had to match? Was it 100%? Was it half? Like, what was the level that you felt comfortable with cutting the ties and saying I had enough, and then you were able to go all in?
Yeah, that is I really love this question. Because the coach in me just wants to like kind of call out the fact that we want to make that security of a number. We make that our excuse, our blocker for not going after what we want, for not making the change. Now, I don't want to take away from, yes, we have financial, like depending on your situation, you have financial, and I'll talk a little bit about what I did. But yeah, you've got financial responsibilities. That might be, caring for other humans if you have kids and or a family. That might be responsibilities to proper mortgage, like whatever it is. I don't want to take away from that, but too quickly stop ourselves dead in our tracks because we have to support, I'm just thinking I had dinner with a couple of friends and both of them going, oh, but like I have to support my kids, so I can't, whatever. I have to support my family, so I could never step away. And I'll share, like, I stepped away as a single woman. No, I don't have kids, but I have 2 properties, which means I have 2 mortgages, and I don't split living expenses with a partner. So there was still a financial responsibility that I had to take really seriously. So to answer your question, that story of like staying in bed for the first week of the year. This is a while ago now, but having that kind of moment of like I got to find something else. Immediately, I was starting to get really clear on what my living expenses were.
Yeah.
What could I start to save? How could I, and I think when we talk about coaching being the biggest investment, or like the best way you can invest in yourself, I think that took me a little bit of a mindset shift too, to go, okay, if I take my savings and I live off them for a year, it's not that I'm wasting my savings, I'm actually investing my own money in my business.
Yeah.
And that was a huge reframe for me to not feel like I was like wasting the money I had saved. It was that I was investing it while I was obviously subsidizing that with my business growing and continuing to grow. But that's how I approached it, was knowing what I needed to, what my burn rate was, essentially, my living expenses, building and planning for that. But the biggest part was the mindset shift around, I'm not like, running my savings account dry. I'm actually I'm self-funded.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That's smart that you were creating a runway for yourself. And I think I had to do this too when I built, I guess it was always fun to like build a dream, but I came up with 3 different budgets. I don't know if you've tried this yet, but you have one that's like your necessary nut, meaning like if you lost everything, I can get rid of Netflix, but I need my cell phone, right? To be able to get work or be able to land clients, that type of thing. So you have your like narrowed down nut. And then you have one that's like a comfortable lifestyle, like the one you're probably living right now, where you got a, vacation, you got like, some comfortable type of thing. You got Netflix to watch stuff. And then the third one is a very good, because most of the time people never create defined goals. So this will actually help you create it, or it actually gives a vision of the future. Like I got to be multi-millionaire to actually afford some of these stuff. But when you actually chunk it down, of having a massage once a week, someone taking care of your lawn or your house, or, having, a jet or other luxuries, you can try to figure out what those are and those numbers. And then you have a mile marker of like success of like, hey, the worst case scenario is here. Here's a good, comfortable living. And then this is where I actually really want to be. So it's a North Star of like planning the leading, lagging indicators of actually what you want. And so I think that's brilliant with trying to look at the runway and really kind of mathematically looking at that success for mile markers.
Yeah, I can't say that I built it out to also like align with my bigger vision. I love that idea. And you also call it something really cool that around like, there's versions of that's accessible to you now. It reminds me of Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek book, because he says like, not everybody wants to be a millionaire, but people want to live like they're millionaires.
There you go.
Right? And so I think that could be really powerful, because you also said about goals and having like that requires you to have such a refined vision. Right? Mm-hmm. And goals are meaningful when we can get specific, we can get measurable, and they can be clear, right? Even if it's the bigger vision goal, like the 10, 15 year, 20, whatever, right? 10x goal, when you start to put numbers, definitely budget, starts to get real and it starts to get measurable. And I think that actually makes it more attainable.
Yeah. There's so many entrepreneurs. I want to get your insight on this, and even like leaders in their careers, where they feel stuck. They're just in the trenches. They can't see the forest between the trees. It's just, they're stuck and they're blocked. What are some like these goal settings things or practices or exercises you walk through with them to really kind of help them see that truer vision of what they actually want to achieve and help them achieve it?
Yeah. Well, I have a framework that I've created from being coached, from coaching, from reading, from podcast listening, that I have created as part of my morning practice. It's really simple. It's really easy. If you if your audience wants access to I have a recorded like version of workshopping it so people can understand how to fill it out. They can just, follow me on Instagram, Kirsten Schmidtke, send me a DM, just say goal, and I will send you this recorded workshop, and you can get a lot more detail on how to do this. But I love that you said unstuck in goals, because I really believe that, like the forest for the trees, like we need to actually get back to the vision. Yeah. We need to get back to the goal. The best way we can get unstuck is to reconnect to what it is that we want. What is it that we most desire? And that can be a personal goal, that can be professional, that can be something for your business, depending kind of where you're feeling that stuckness. But as soon as we can ground ourselves and reconnect to what we want, not what we want for others, not what we think we should want, but what we actually truly want, something kind of unlocks in us, because now we know where to focus our energy and where to focus our attention. And that's what makes goals so powerful, right? Is if we don't have a direction, you spend all day kind of aimlessly sending your energy, your time, your resources in so many different directions, and you end up depleted, you end up tired, you end up feeling like you're stuck, because you don't have that level of focus, and goals really provide you with that level of focus. So with clients, it really is as simple as asking, okay, what do you want? Right? Maybe why do you want it? And even further, like, why don't you have it? And you can start to get really connected to a level and like refinement of your goal that can create that kind of that fire, like that like light inside you to come back on and go, okay, yes, this is what I want. This is where I need to direct my energy. And in kind of my morning practice, there's a couple other steps that I do to really start to dial up the belief in the goal, get clear on the actions I'm going to take, and then really focus on the progress that I'm making so that I'm building momentum and staying motivated to keep me out of the stuckness.
There's always these like cliche movies like The Notebook where that guy was like, what do you want? She's like, I just don't know. Yeah. Right? There's a lot of people I talk to sometimes that are just like, they know what they don't want, kind of, but they don't know what they want. And so it's like, do you go through a phase where it's like, well, let's unlock the wheel of life in essence of like your relationships, your finances, your business? Do you kind of go through the whole aspect of helping them define those goals a little more crystal clear?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the wheel of life as a tool to, and if you're not familiar with it, it's really looking at the different aspects of your life. The three that I find clients most most focus on is a work or career, like business related goal, a life goal. So whether that's relationship, family, travel, like something that's more connected to how they want to experience like the way they're living their life, and then a health goal. Those tend to be the kind of the three areas that my clients, and in those three, we could, refine them even deeper, like, or, into a category. And, the wheel of life is so great because when you start to rate yourself at a 10 in each area, you start to really become aware of like, oh, I thought I was feeling good in this. Like there's always some surprises. There's always some nuggets. And the question I like to ask when I do use that tool is, too quickly sometimes we're like, oh, but I'm not a 10. So we kind of fall into this like judgment trap and, oh gosh, how am I going to get to a 10? And that just seems maybe overwhelming and completely daunting because you've maybe rated yourself a 6. So what I try to focus on with clients is like, what would a 7 look like? Like if you're at a 6 when it comes to work and career goals and what would like a 6, like if we're at a 6, what would a 7 look like? Okay, maybe that's our goal. Maybe that's where we start, right? Because sometimes when we see that gap, we can just totally check out by the overwhelming feeling, or like I said, the judgment that sets in that I should be at a 10 or I should be rating myself higher. So I also like to use that as kind of a gauge. And then, okay, what's the increment? Like what is one step? What is 1 7, maybe an 8? And then we can get the goal from the vision of just moving ourselves closer to a 10.
What are some of these practices or habits that you had to install yourself to be this person that you are now with helping coach people? What are some of the things that you've had to install or even uninstall or things like that you've had to build to where you are right now?
Yeah. Morning routine, for sure, is
Take us through that then.
One.
What does that look like?
Morning routine. So it evolves. It's definitely evolved. I found, during, I'm going to say, probably about 4 years ago is when I started to actually understand that was available or possible. So for me at that time, it looked more like yoga and meditation in the morning. It looked like journaling in the morning. Now that was also when we had a little bit more of a different life because we were in isolation with pandemic and there was different things. Sure. I would say let's fast forward to now because I think this would be more relevant for those who have maybe more commitments in the calendar and those types of things. So, I absolutely encourage waking up earlier. That has been game changing and transformative for me. It actually started with working with a coach who hosted 6 a.m. calls that were no one's on video at 6 a.m. But the idea is that you're studying material that is more on the mindset and motivation side. So in the call, you're, learning about new principles, learning about new ideas, learning about and you go into the day, by 7:00, you're already at more of a ready for a peak performance level because you've started the day by seeing possibility about by thinking you learned something. You've, maybe had a little bit of inspiration from that conversation or what she shared. So that to me was really, really powerful. But always, I've been a big writer. My whole life, journaling has always come really naturally to me. But what really shifted and changed the game is starting with the goal setting. So kind of like what we were talking about, but actually starting my journal entry with writing out the goal as if it's happened.
Love that.
Right? So, and you can even use this sentence, I'm so happy and grateful now that I, earned this much revenue in this quarter of this year in my business, getting really specific. Or I am so happy and grateful that I had a wonderful time on my long weekend vacation in Niagara-on-the-Lake, which is what I'm going to do coming up here shortly. Wow. But writing it really specifically, but from having the goal realized, from the goal happening now. Because what I find is from there, then if I were to journal or to write or to now I'm got some energy. I'm oh, the goal, that's possible. Great. Now I'm and my mood and energy just going to the day. So definitely, whether it's meditation or, just going right into goal setting, I think that definitely taking some time just for you, or maybe it's going for a walk, whatever, maybe listening to a podcast, whatever works for you. But taking some time to actually go slow and intentionally into the morning, because that sets you up for success. And having your goal setting at the beginning of the day, it allows you to keep your focus on throughout the day. You're reminded of that too. Mm-hmm. So that's been a really big part of my morning routine. There's coffee, there's a dog walk. I've learned that I actually also love to do as much as I can in the morning because it's my best time. So I'll often try to get my workouts in as well. Anything creative I like to try and do in the morning. And that's what's kept me with the early wake up time, is because I've realized how much better I operate early in the day. And so, but the non-negotiables are definitely, like I said, a meditation or some form of, and I forgot the reading. Sorry. I also like to get some reading in the morning too. You can see, that's why I have to get up early. There's a lot of things I want to do in the morning. Yeah,
it does. It sounds like it. What about leaning into doing what's hard? Let me ask you about that. Because I think we have a comfort culture that leans into pleasure, comfort, and that's the North Star in their life. How do I build a business that's passive so I can spend more quote-unquote time, quote-unquote more money to do and spend on other things that they want? But really under the surface, that's not really what they want. How did you go about leaning into hard things to build the life that you wanted now?
Yeah. Well, I think you just answered one key part of the question, in that like they don't really want it. Because I've even experienced that coaching clients, right, where it's, supporting them maybe in their sales strategy and their sales mindset, and then we come back and they still haven't moved forward, and it's like, okay, but how badly do you want to hit the revenue target? Or how much do you really want to build the business? Because, by the way, it's also okay to, if keeping your business, maybe like sustainable and profitable, but not like hockey stick, like that's another option. Like, but it's what you want, right? And if you really want to see growth, then you're going to have to do some hard things, right? If we want to see expansion, if we want to see our level of performance, we're going to have to do some hard things. And I really credit my sales career for doing hard things, because I learned really quickly that I was going to have a lot of not difficult conversations because there was tension, but I was going to have to, like, okay, I am a 5'0" blonde woman who was in the technology industry, which is male dominated, in the sales part of the organization, which is also mostly male. And there's nothing right, wrong, bad. That's just the facts. But it did require a level of stepping into being confident, speaking so I was heard, raising my hand to say something even if I didn't know it was the right answer, but knowing that on the other side of that was the result I wanted. Knowing on the other side of, even when I started my career, I was still like in my late 20s, and maybe I was meeting with a CTO or a CIO who's in his 50s. Like, I needed to take a deep breath, shake his hand, and introduce myself with confidence. Yeah. So I think my sales career, and it's not only the male female dynamic. I'm just speaking to like it did. It's just different. It's just different. And I had to have and I'm saying hard conversations, not because anyone was there were some not so nice people along the way, mostly just like lovely people. But if you wanted to have the opportunity to send a proposal, to quote on a deal, to earn the deal, to close the deal, you needed to be able to introduce yourself with confidence, to have the conversation, to sit in the boardroom and be the only woman amongst 12 other people. And so I think that my sales career for sure was something that allowed me to really push outside my comfort zone constantly, because it was the only way I was going to hit quota, which ultimately was like my goal, to hit accelerators and get paid more commission and really, do the thing, win the President's Club, like win the trip for this, like the other awards and accolades. If that's what I wanted, I was going to have to get uncomfortable.
Love that.
Yeah.
What are some other principles that you live by or that you teach that you could share with some of our listeners here?
Principles? Well, one, when it comes to deals, sales, and opportunities, one thing I love to say is it's not over until it's over. Because I think we're too quick to give up. We're too quick if the opportunity isn't come to us perfectly and nicely and the person wants to buy right away. We don't want to do the follow-up because it's hard. There's a hard thing for some people too, right? So one of my things is like, it's not over till it's over. Like, until someone says to me, no, thank you, or like, not right now, like follow up in a year, like, great. And I have to say, like, that has allowed me to, like, that helped me with being successful in my sales career, as well as building a business and being a coach. Because, we never know what's going on in someone else's life. You never know when you're going to land in someone's inbox and they need you more than they ever thought. Like, you just solved their problem by landing in their inbox. Or how you can, by just persevering and doing the hard thing, you can actually make a deal happen that otherwise wouldn't happen with your involvement. So so it's not over till it's over. Like literally until you're done and we're here. So that is one thing that I think really keeps me going. Another thing that I really love around, and I guess I'm thinking more about, like, these are kind of mindset principles too that really help me, is I used to really fall into this trap of like, it's something's happening, it's really good, it's really exciting, but don't get too excited because it's too good to be true. And I would hold on to this, it's too good to be true. Like, don't, like, instead of enjoying and telling myself it is good and it is true. And that has been a powerful reframe for me to like we're here. We only got one life. So when good things are happening, let's enjoy them. Let's live them full out. Let's be there. Let's be present. And I think that's been a really great principle for me, is like, it is good and it is true. And I guess the last part that I'll add to that, or the third one I can offer too, is that like everything is happening for me. That's something that also has been really, really powerful in
big reframe.
Yeah. We get really, I mean, life is going to happen, right? There is so much that you can't control, and that is true. But what you can control is your thinking, is our actions, is how we show up, is what we believe. That the lens, you get to create the lens through which you see the world, right? And when you move away from things happening to you and instead things are happening for you, you honestly, you will see possibility, you will see opportunity, you will find the right client, you will find the right job, you will find the right partner. Like, things just open up for you when you start to see life happening for you rather than life happening to you. So those would be the three that I live by.
I love that. I love that. And I appreciate you sharing this story here with us. And I know you had said there's some links that you have on your social media, and people grab some of that resources with Goal, connect with her on that. We'll have those links down below in the show notes. Yeah. It was great having you on. And until next time, we'll keep on at it with inviting more high performers on, just like we have all of our guests here. And great to have you on, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for having me.